So I'm Esteban. I'm the founder of Team Antonic. Team Antonic is a network of the best 0.8% of freelance designers. We have vetted over 120,000 profiles so far. And yeah, we only work with the best 0.8%, which means that we have like more or less like a network, a number of a pool of candidates and people we work with of about 2,000 people. And the particularity of the model is that we only help AI and tech startups, primarily from San Francisco, to scale with design. And we are currently actually like expanding to marketers as well, and we are helping them with go-to-market. So we can take care of different aspects of the startup journey. Many times, like startups come to us, and then we help them with the design of their pitch decks. Then we start working, for example, with their website, landing pages, and then we can go with their brand, and then from there we can help them scale their creative assets, like with graphic design and other parts with go-to-market strategies as well. I'm connected with incredible creative directors and fractional CMOs as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Esteban, and welcome. And yeah, today we are talking about how do you utilize and apply branding for scale. As you know, at SalesBark, we're all about operations for scale and anything on how companies can scale faster and better. So one of the questions is really that we get a lot is really, how do you define branding? I think branding has so many definitions and meanings for people, but how do you define branding?
Sure. Yeah, I will try to represent that as much as possible, and then represent the creative directors I work with. So the definition of branding is something that is widely misunderstood. I've read over 20 books and on the subject, and it's something that it's not properly defined. Even when you search on Google, it's like most people won't necessarily agree with it. So I think it's very important to start with the definition. And the best definition I came across is that branding is simply like the gut feeling that you place in people when they come across your company, simply. So it's like, what do people say when you're not in the room? How do they remember you? So it's like, how do you get their attention as well? So it's like all of those feelings that you create within people when they come across your company. And the thing is that for great branding to cut through the noise, because this is like still a bit theoretical, so I want to give you an example that probably can speak better, is that the human mind only sees contrast. And it's like we only understand black because we understand white. And there are like plenty of experiments about that, for example, like in Aborigines cultures, like in the Amazon culture, there is like a tribe, I don't remember exactly which one, but they have like 16 different words for the color green, but they don't have a word for the color blue. And then like when the researchers give them 17 cards, and then one of the colors is obviously blue for us, they cannot distinguish, or at least it's not as fast as we would do, simply because they can characterize different greens that we may not be able to even distinguish ourselves, but they can. And however, they cannot distinguish like the green from the blue because they only see green everywhere. So it's like it's just a way to say that it's like the way the human mind works is by contrast. Or like, for example, you only understand that something is hot in comparison to something that was colder before. And so a great brand, what it does is that it creates contrast, basically. So it's like, if your brand is actually like blending in across the other, like among the other brands, then probably it won't raise too much attention. So it's like, that's the reason why like many founders sometimes come to us and it's like, I want a brand. It's like, okay, can you give us examples of brands that you like? It's like, I only like Apple. But it's like if you copy Apple, then what you do is that you are reinforcing the position of Apple. You are not making yourself unique because you're not creating contrast, and 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 plenty of like designers are actually like like training themselves with the brand of Apple. So Apple is the brand that is the most represented outside, and that probably is like the most copied. But what companies don't realize is that when they copy the brand of Apple, it's just making Apple like the brand of Apple like more reinforced because it's their personality. So it's like, for example, like if I had a personality and then everyone copies my personality outside, then it's like, oh yeah, this is the personality of S7, right? It's like, so that's basically, I mean, I hope I could like cut through the noise and make sure that yeah, this branding definition is like well understood.
Oh, thank you, Esteban. And it's so great to hear all the different cultural aspects, which is why we love bringing different cultural aspects into our conversations. Because also here in Silicon Valley, where we are based, there's so many different players from all over the world, and bringing in these cultural different aspects into it makes it quite unique and stand out. In the US, I know with my British sounding accent, it always people talk to me just because of a non-American accent, and I'm sure it's the same. It's the same for you, but that's a really great perspective on branding. Now, why is branding so important for especially early growth stage startups or startups or companies from any size, but especially since we're focusing on growth stage startups? Why is it so important? And what is it that most companies miss when they start with branding?
Yes, so the reason why it's important, so probably like the best way for me to help you understand that is that, for example, like let's say that as a human, so we wear clothes and we have like some types of clothes with a certain style. It's like there is the French style, the Spanish style, the British style, whatever. Right? And then it's like, so we wear clothes, then we have like, as a person, we have like a personality as well. And then if we want to interact with people, so then like we go to different places. So it's like, I may go to the bar, I may go to a restaurant and so on. And then I interact with people. I may, like go to a company if I want to apply to a job and so on. The thing is that many businesses actually, they focus on go-to-market, and within go-to-market, at least when they are young and, like when they are early stage, they focus on channels. And it's like, they all want to know like the channel hack. It's like, like, okay, like how do I do cold emails? How do I do Facebook ads? How do I do like, how do I post and all of that? And it's like everyone is focusing on channels, but channels is like, it's like, in my parallel is like me going to the restaurant, me going to, like the park and so on. But it's like, if I want to create an impression on people, it's not necessarily about just me showing up to those different places. It's like, probably I need to dress well. And that would be like, like the colors of the brand, the logo, the fonts, etc. And then I need to have a personality. I need to show up. I need to connect with people in certain ways, which is like the deeper aspect of brands, which is like what we call the tone of voice, and then making sure that everything aligns in terms of visual aesthetics. So the thing is that, as a teenager, probably like when you're a teenager and then you want to socialize with friends, then you think like, okay, like only clothes matter, for example. And then it's like you want the best clothes because like that's the way you are perceived by your friends. But then when you're a bit more mature, then it's like you're like, no, actually, like, I realize that clothes, I mean, alone don't matter. Then it's like I need to have a personality, I need to have a positioning, I need to have, it's like, and then it's kind of obvious as humans, but it's not that obvious in business, because then it's like the way most companies start is that they just go to channels, and it's like they just look for channels, and then they are like, yeah, just give me a logo and some colors, and that's it, right? And then they go out in the market and it's like, okay, why don't people resonate enough with this brand? It's because like, like there is no essence, there is no brand personality, positioning and all of that. And it's like, you need to dig a bit deeper because, it's like you need to convey that gut feeling. And then we go back to the definition of branding, essentially.
And that's really interesting because that kind of leads to my next question, which you kind of started to answer. What's the difference between that brand that looks good, that's pretty, that's, has beautiful colors, versus a brand that drives growth?
Yeah, I already started to answering that question, but I want to dive in a bit deeper on that. So it's like, so now if we talk about business itself, so, like business is simply like helping people go from a current situation to a desired situation. And that's the thing that, that's the basic lesson in sales, basically. It's like when the prospect comes, it's like, assess his situation as like, you need to understand his current situation, and then you need to position that in a desired situation. When you create a product, like you do that in a functional way. So for example, like if I want to send a message to someone at the other end of the world, and I can only send a postcard because the internet doesn't exist, then it's like, oh, and then I hear of the internet connection, then I may buy an internet connection. So that's like, so then I can get into that desired situation so that the person can receive my text message immediately, right? So, or if water is cold at home and then I want hot water, then I will buy a water burner. So it's like, so that's, it's like, that's in functional terms. Now, what's less obvious is that branding helps you achieve the same. It's like, so the product bridges that gap, but branding also bridges that gap in emotional ways. So, for example, you may feel as normal, but then if you want to feel special, you will buy from Apple. Because Apple, like with that, I think it's an ad that appeared in the 90s. It's that Think Different ad. They created that product for the rebels, for the misfits, for the artists, for people who are exceptional. And then they make you feel actually that feeling that is like, oh, so if I want to not feel normal, which is I want to feel exceptional, then I need to buy an Apple and then I will feel exceptional, right? So it's like, if I want to, so yeah, in some family moments, for example, it's like, if we want to make this family moment happier, so then let's buy a Coca-Cola. And it's like, because Coca-Cola brings happiness, right? So it's like, it's like big companies understood that because they understand that it's all about the feeling. It's not, the product by itself is not enough, especially nowadays, because like we are arriving in the AI era where I heard that from many founders. Well, I'm not technical enough myself, but I heard that from many founders who are, great at creating products and they develop that themselves and everything. And they all say that the development time is shrinking and that they feel that in the future, like maybe one AI prompt, I mean, I don't know if it's true, but probably things are more difficult than that, but it's like one AI prompt can make sure that you can copy like easily like another product out there. So it's like, if that's happening, then the only thing that differentiates you is actually branding, because the brand is like, no one can copy your personality. And if people try to copy your personality, then it's actually great, because then it's like they are expanding the word that you're actually exceptional, right? So yeah, I think it's something extremely important because it's the only thing that creates the defensibility of the business, and that makes sure that the business is actually has a moat and it's defensible.
Great. So when's the best time for companies to start building a brand? Because they initially the websites are typically just a landing page. They're so busy building the product. When should they really start thinking about building their brand, and how do you step them, especially the founders who likely are more technical? How do you step them through doing that?
Yeah, so So probably like another question, like, like going back to the parallel that I made before is like, it's kind of like, when is the best time to forge your personality? When is, as a human, it's like, when is the best time to have a personality, right? So it's like, well, the answer is like always, So the thing is that the market is accelerating so fast right now that, like companies are emerging faster than ever. It's easier to actually probably like copy products and all of that. And go to market in general, like starts to come at the beginning of the cycle. So many companies used to start with first, like the traditional approach, which is first we focus on the product. And then once we finish the product, then we can actually set some foundations, and then we can start to go to the market and all of that. That was probably great like a few years ago, but now things accelerate so fast that by the time you go to market, if you do that, then the market's already shifted. And then you have plenty of competitors who already, like understood your approach. So I believe that the best moment to start branding is actually at the very beginning of the company. And just to have like, like an initial hypothesis for the personality that you want to portray out there, and then start connecting with customers. And that doesn't need to be like, it doesn't need to be like an exceptional branding with a verbal identity, with a competitive analysis and all of that. Well, you should know your biggest competitors, but you can do it faster and then just have like an initial set of colors, fonts, icons, and start going out there. At least you have some clothes, and and then you can and then you can interact with people, essentially.
So basically you're saying don't, as a business, go running around naked.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Businesses like founders, they tell themselves like, yeah, I will do it later. It's not important. And I understand that probably in the traditional way of doing business, it used to not be important, but I believe that it becomes increasingly important, and now it's not a luxury anymore, is it? It's truly a must-have.
Yeah. And speaking of kind of that must-have, one of the questions I have, which is a little out of left field maybe, but when you're thinking about that and when you're thinking about branding, the content and getting yourself out in front of people before you necessarily have an MVP or something like that, how do you lead founders or startups through that kind of process when they may not have, like you said, like you talked about, not going the old route where you create the product and then you do the branding, go to market and all of that. How do you address kind of that go to market before they necessarily may have an MVP or a product set up?
So for early stage startups, right?
Yeah.
So, well, that's the approach that is actually currently being taught in a couple of incubators, which is first, you need to understand your customers, like do market research. Can be theoretical on your computer, but it can also be like by actually interacting with them directly, understanding where they're at, where do they want to go, and what do you need to build in between. And then by interacting with them, like you will be able to understand that, so the current situation, the desired situation, and that gap. And then that gap will be your product that will help you fill that gap. And then because you interact with them, you can sense their personality. And then you will start to get a sense of like, like how they, what is the language that they use, how do they speak, if they prefer to be more serious, if they're corporate, or if like you should be like super conversational, or if you should be happy with them. Like, it's like you will start to have this sense, and then this will give you actually like, like the first insights as to how you need to create your product and how you need to create your brand as well. Because then it's like the brand is just making sure that you have those conversations at scale and that those conversations can reflect who you are as a company.
Yeah, and also, so a lot of personal, because a company also evolves around the personality of the founders. And how do you bring personal branding into the mold of the company branding as well? Because I know there's a lot of things that people need to do from a personal branding perspective, and then a lot of things with the company's branding perspective. But how do you normally tie these two things in?
I would say that, so I know like a couple of examples. One of them is Lemlist, which is like a French company that emerged quite a lot like recently. And what they do is that the founder at the beginning takes the brand of the company itself. So if you go to my LinkedIn page, I will have like the same brand as the one of my company. And progressively, like, like as you start getting traction, because at the beginning you want to stay minimal in terms of like, like the investment that you put, and thinking of two brands at the same time, it's very difficult. Only thinking of one brand is actually difficult. So it's like, that's why like you should only create one brand, which is like the one of, well, you can start with yourself, or sometimes you can start with the one of the company, and then you will think about that later, how to, like split in between once the founder or the company starts to become more famous. But at the beginning, I would say that you should, like, the founder should start with the brand of the company. The brand of the company most of the time will adapt to the one of the founder, because if the founder, like, like has that mindset of making sure that they have a differentiated brand and that they go to market as soon as possible, they will be the ones making the sale. And then if they are the ones making the sale, then they understand like, like the current situation and the desired situation of their clients. They understand that gap, and they will start to shift a bit their personality as well, because founders are very flexible as well. And then their personality will shift. And then most of the time they need to align all of that together, and then progressively the company may take their personality, which is totally fine. And if not, then like, like they will start to see like gaps and differentiations between their own brand and the one of the company. And progressively then, once they have obviously, like more experience, more funds, more traction, more customers and all of that, then the volume that they will bring in will give them like, like more clarity as to what they need to do, and it will be more intuitive actually.
And so we've talked a little bit about, early stage startups and just getting out there and putting some clothes on. But when do you recommend that a startup maybe evolve or iterate on their brand?
I would say as soon as they start to see some changes. So there are actually 4 case scenarios of that. So one is when they start to see that their company doesn't have much personality. So, if they have plenty of calls and it's like, yeah, I'm just coming to you because of your features, for example. Like, okay, so I mean, there is nothing else than my features. And it's like, no, just your features. So like, okay. And then it's like, not so much differentiation. Then another one is when the brand doesn't feel that emotional gap. So when the brand likes to actually like, so it fails at helping the customer reaching that desired situation emotionally beforehand. And it's like, and that's something that like big companies experience a lot. So I remember like, like some videos of, there are some videos out there of Steve Jobs that when he started to reposition Apple, well, after he got fired and all of that, then, like he started to get into that, and he started to understand his customers much better, and he started to develop that gut feeling as to where Apple needed to be and how it should show up to the world. And then he understood that it would be for people who want to feel different. And then it's like, so that's why, like, he wouldn't go. So it also goes with positioning as well. He understood that he wouldn't sell one computer per home, which is like the case of Microsoft. He was like, no, I won't do that. I will only sell to people who want to feel special. And this is my target market. And then if they want to feel special, then, like, these people have certain characteristics. They are more refined and all of that. And then he started to adapt that within the design itself. That's why, like, for most designers, Steve Jobs is like the father of design, essentially, of branding.
Yes, he does do that well.
Yeah. And then another case scenario. So yeah, I only mentioned two, sorry. So it's like another case scenario is when companies start to scale rapidly. So, like, they start to create assets and they feel like they cannot create assets as fast as they would like to. And then as a consequence, most of the time it's because, like, they can increase their team. So for example, let's say that they bring on like a couple of graphic designers and they go from one graphic designer to 5 graphic designers, but still the process is extremely chaotic. They cannot figure that out. Assets are inconsistent. So it's like,
Oh, we lost Esteban.
For a second, I thought that was my internet
Yeah.
again.
Esteban, you froze there for a bit. So if you don't mind repeating that.
Sorry.
All right. So yeah, for sure. I will start from the beginning. So I was saying that when companies start to scale, sometimes their processes start to be a bit chaotic, and then they might have at the beginning like one graphic designer, and they may bring in 5 graphic designers, for example, and at that moment they can produce much more assets, but they may see some inconsistencies in the website. So the website doesn't look the same as the ad, which doesn't look the same as like an email newsletter, and etc. Which means that when people come across these assets, they don't necessarily recognize their brand. And when that happens is because they don't have a strong brand essence and they don't have a brand system, which means that they need to rework on the strategy itself and have like a new revamp of it.
And the fourth case?
Sorry, actually, like there were only 3 cases.
But it's a great segue, I think, to talk as well from, because you mentioned a brand system, which is really where business operations come into play. We know that a lot of companies fail 50%, 55% of the time because they're not spending enough time and attention to business operations, irrespective of the group, which helps improve the workflows. And we know in this day and age of building a brand where you have got to be visible, it takes a lot of asset creation and aspects around that and consistency, because you depend on algorithms to get you through the different channels to your market. So what are some of the mistakes that you've seen about companies around their brand systems, and what are the aspects that they should really take care of as early as possible in setting up those brand systems that give them that consistency?
I would say that more than the companies making mistakes, I would say that I've seen plenty of mistakes among creative directors and designers, actually, who advise those companies. Because many times, these people focus on the aesthetics, because it's like, since I am a designer, so then I will give you like a logo, some colors, and some icons and so on. And it's like, the problem is that you can give that, but it's like you only give the clothes to the person, and then you didn't give the personality to it. And then what happens is that then that company goes out and they don't understand why, but they don't feel like they are very differentiated. So for example, like sometimes we have like some people from time to time who come to us and then they are like, oh yeah, I saw your website and it really speaks to me. And like I remember that there was like someone recently. Well, he's actually quite famous, so I won't say his name, but like he told me like he went to our website and he was like telling me like, oh, your website looks like a cake, and if it was a cake, I would definitely eat it. So it's like, and then he was like, and I really love the fact that you use the tea and tonic and the gin and tonic, and I want to drink it, and I feel like I'm already starving for that. So it's like you need to, it's like, well, that's actually great because that's how we actually created the brand, and we had that in mind because we wanted to create that association of tea and tonic, gin and tonic, and then like creating that vibe of people feeling like in a luxury bar, but at the same time relaxed. That was our whole thing. But it's like the best thing that can happen is that people tell you that, whereas like you only show visuals within it, and then you didn't tell them like like what you wanted to create, and then that means that they have a feeling, because the way it works is that actually, so it's like, for example, like if we talk about what companies want is like more revenue, more sales. So it's like, what does create sales? So it's like, one is like go-to-market strategies, like it's being in different channels, different places, and it's normal that companies think about that. But the other one, which companies don't think about, is actually the brand. The reason they don't think about it is because no one truly understands, and I have interviewed like, honestly, like over 200 creative directors, and it looked impressive to me that plenty of creative directors that are even like working for the biggest companies like in Coca-Cola or like Intel and so on, they cannot give you a definition of branding. I mean, it's like, okay, tell me branding. What's branding? And it's like, oh yeah, it's the colors, or like the design assets or things like that. So it's like, it's not very clear, and it's not very clear even for professionals. So it's like, if it's not clear for professionals, it cannot be clear for companies by definition. And I believe that, I mean, I deeply understand why. It's because it's extremely difficult to get to the point and to the core of that branding definition, essentially. So yeah, I think it's like, I wouldn't blame necessarily companies. I would blame actually sometimes like the experts. I'm not saying all experts are like that, but it's extremely difficult to find an expert who can bring clarity into that. And then yeah, about what I was saying is like the reason why people, I mean, the reason why customers get to buy, and the reason why they get to buy with branding, is because when you have a great brand, you store a memory in someone's subconscious, and that memory is converted into an emotion. And then the way it works is that whenever they need a service, then the first thing that comes is the emotion, and that's how they remind themselves. Because if you play with the logical mind only, and you expect people to remember the name of your company, it won't happen, because we face too much advertising. I think like per day, like we face, I don't remember the number, but it's like in between 50 and 500 ads per day, something like that. It's a crazy number.
So many.
Like, you cannot remember the name. So the only thing that you can retrieve is actually the emotion. And that emotion is the thing that helps you like, remember the company. So that's why it's very important. And that's how we relate directly to sales, actually.
So one of the questions I have as we're talking here is, when you're setting up these brands and you're talking to these companies about go-to-markets, eventually you kind of hand it off to them, right? And it's you've done your work and they're to continue on. What kind of process or system or resources do you give them for that consistency across branding? So not just the colors and the pretty pictures, but also the tone and the content and the personality that you leave them with the branding. Like, how do you set them up for success post work with you?
Yeah, so we give them like a brand book and a design system that should be as simple as possible. And the reason why it should be simple is because it should be used within the company. So you work with systems and you understand that a system is only used if it's like made to solve the problem and if it's as simple as possible. It needs to be efficient, because otherwise, like people forget about it and it's like, okay, this doesn't work and so on. So it's like, so we give them like a design system that is easy to understand and that is applicable for the different assets that they are creating. So they can retrieve from it. So they can have like, like a set of fonts that are used in different case scenarios. They can have like, in different case scenarios that we actually specify. They can have like colors as well. And then they can have, for example, a set of icons and illustrations. And then they know exactly. So it's like we give them guidelines so that like even a graphic designer, but also sometimes like there are marketers within the company who can understand these guidelines and then, like take that to create their specific post and put a title with the specific font and then like have a specific illustration or merge 3 different illustrations that they want to have in that post. And then with a specific background color that fits with that situation, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, it's like everyone should understand how to use that, but specifically the people who are working on that. And at some point, it's like, well, we can put a graphic designer, but if a marketer wants to do that, then he can also create his own landing pages or ads.
Thanks. Now, coming back to the system, so they've got everything set up, everything's aligned. So what are the typical branding systems that companies need to put in place to keep on driving? And also what I like about systems, especially if you start getting new people in, it gets everyone aligned with the same messaging and aesthetics and what this brand is about and that cultural values of what this company stands for. So what do you recommend companies to do to build these systems, and how do you help your customers set up these branding systems?
Yeah, so it's a difficult question because like we are talking about creativity on one side, and then system implementation, which is like like kind of the two opposite poles. And so the way we can do that, so it depends on the startup stage. So at the beginning stages, you may want to go out to the market very fast, and then at that point you only need like a basic brand identity. So you only need like a set of icons, colors, fonts, and then some brand guidelines with that. Then you can use, most of the time, like companies, I mean, nowadays, actually, Figma expanded quite a lot. So it's like they can use Figma. We can put all of these brand assets there. And then within Figma, they can create like different pages, whether it's like for landing pages that they want to create, for marketing assets, and so on. And it's important to be extremely organized within the file, because over time, like, as you create more assets, then things start to expand, and then like no one can find it within the file, right? So it's extremely important to be very well organized, also because the organization will help you create the new asset faster. So for example, if you have a page for only landing pages, then it's like it will be easy to just duplicate that landing page that you created last time and then start from there instead of starting from scratch again. And same for creating ads and so on. And the other thing is that at the beginning stages, you may not want, since you don't have too much traffic, you may not want to care too much about development. So then we also recommend that they use tools that are no-code tools, where you don't need the intervention of a developer, because then it becomes, then it adds on communication, and then as a consequence, then you need someone who needs to tweak that, and then you need like the coordination between the designer and the developer. So at the beginning, you don't need that, because well, you just want to go fast, and sometimes like maybe the founder can go himself and just change the headline of the hero sections, for example. But over time, then as you want to scale, then probably you will want like to have a blog. You will want to have like more visibility, different pages, to have more structure, and then you will need to bring a developer. And when that happens, then when that happens, then like you will want to have like a better design system, much more implemented, and then to have like a better coordination between the designers and the developers. So then that's something that will will shift over time, and then you will need to have like one point of contact in the design team. If it is a team, initially it's just one designer, and one point of contact in the development team as well.
And I think a key aspect around this is work with people who understand how to build these systems.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it becomes quite overwhelming. And I think
I do have one more question, if I could be so bold. So as far as like resources for channels, mostly is what I'm thinking of, or what I've used in the past. How do you feel about things like Hootsuite, or things that are help to schedule posts, or to write blogs, or to make sure there's kind of consistent channel usage with your branding, not necessarily creating the creatives, if you will, or the content, but making sure it gets out in some sort of process and some sort of scheduled format. Do you recommend those? Do you recommend other resources that I didn't name specifically?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, now we are getting into the go-to-market aspect. So it's like more like how do you put your message out once you created all of these assets. I prefer not to recommend tools, simply because I believe that the tools actually adapt to the team and to the stage of the company. So it's truly like up to the person who is working with them. So the person who is implementing that system, who needs to choose appropriate tools for the stage of the company and for that team, and sometimes even like for the specific industry they are in. So I think, yeah, obviously like tools are amazing, and that's why they are expanding, and they are like eating the world. I mean, especially right now, like we know that with with this trade war that Trump is creating, and all of that is like, it's like, well, we are, I mean, the US is exporting mostly software all over the world. So, which means that those companies are becoming incredibly valuable, and everyone around the world is actually using them. So, I mean, yeah, and that's the way we have evolved as humans. I think, like, like the Homo sapiens became like more like smarter than other species that disappeared only because of language and tools. So obviously, it's like, I think like that won't change in the future, and tools will only help people to be much more efficient, much more organized, and yeah, I mean, creating systems is actually the core of any company at the end. If you don't have systems, you simply don't have a company, because at the end of the day, it's just like you need to, it's like it's a big machine of systems of small systems that are coordinated within it. So you have like the recruiting department, that's a little machine, and then you have like the marketing department, a little machine, then you have like the sales department, another little machine, the service delivery department, like another little machine, and so on. So it's like, and then the whole thing is actually a system itself. So yeah, that's why I tend to talk more about like brand systems and how you help scale, because many times startups struggle to achieve that, especially with with the creative side of it, since most of the time designers don't really think about it, because it's extremely difficult actually to think about it, since we are talking about systems that are that is extremely rational on one side, and then like creativity that is like, it's like it's a chaotic way of generating ideas. So it's like merging that together is very difficult at the end.
Oh, that's how a brain is structured, right and left, right? The two together. But thank you for also describing ScaleSpark and the systems aspects that we help companies establish in such a beautiful way. But I think we have time for one more question. Obviously, there's so much more to cover in this topic, and we'll definitely do that in some follow-on conversations. But a lot of early growth stage companies also look at needing funding. So what are the ways that the brand can help the ability to attract investors and secure more funds?
Yeah, so I just want to touch base like on the entire discussion that we had. Is like, at the end of the day, like, investors are human. And it's like, and then you want investors to remember your company, right? So and if you want to leave them with that gut feeling that your company is worth investing on, sorry, then you need to, obviously the founder has his own personality, but he needs to actually like show some seriousness into working on that and making sure that like that the investor understands that he has like deeper thoughts about, especially about how he will acquire customers and how he will go to market. So it's actually a signal that he sends to the investor to tell him how serious he is about the mission. It reminds me about a friend who, so he wants to start like an incredible company, and he's raising funds. And the thing is that he doesn't like social media, and he doesn't like like external communications and so on. And then at the beginning we were just having dinner, like at some point, and then like he was telling me, yeah, for go to market, like I don't want to do that on social media and so on. And then it's like, I was like, well, I believe it's not the right approach, because like you need to get in touch with customers, but okay. And then something like 4 months later, then I see him like posting on social media, and he was like like putting posts out there and all of that. Problem is that since he didn't start before, then obviously like the first time he was doing it, he wasn't doing it well. And then he was doing it with ChatGPT, and then like taking some stock images and so on. And then I was like, I was reaching out to him, and I was like, hey, like, didn't you say that you don't like social media? Like, why are you posting that? And he was like, yeah, it's because investors, like, like I'm trying to get some investors and I cannot. So it's like, apparently what they like is the founder to show some proof. So now I'm posting on social media, and I will actually like like attend to some events and whatever, and then I will do like some graphic design or whatever. So it's kind of funny, because it's like investors are also humans, and they will obviously, part of the due diligence that they will be doing is obviously looking at all your external communication assets and see how you will be able to attract customers, because that's the return on investment. Because if that doesn't happen, then obviously they cannot get their money back. So that's why this whole thing is extremely important. But you don't have to start with like have like a full brand system with a strategic framework and positioning and messaging and UI. And it's like, you don't need to start there. You can just start small as a founder who is just getting started. But you need to start, because the fact of making you start just having like like those initial fonts, colors, icons, it will make you think. Like, you will store that in your subconscious, and then over time you will start thinking about that, and then you will start sensing the gut feeling that people have, and then like what they say about your company. And then when it's time to actually like like have a bigger revamp of that, you will know the answers already. Whereas like if you never got started, which was the case of my friend, then it's like you will get it wrong, and the stakes will be high.
Yeah, it really resonates when I hear you say that, investors are just people. I think that's, to a large extent, founders sometimes forget that investors aren't some unknown entity that you've never met before. They're also just human. They're just like the customers that you did customer discovery with. They're you are, the expectations around what you're giving them and what they're giving you is different perchance, but they are just humans at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know why we have this misrepresentation of investors, probably because there are like big VCs, and I don't know, like sometimes they are maybe a bit scary or whatever. But I got to like hang out and meet a couple of investors, and they are extremely nice people. I mean, they're like very nice, and they're like, and they have their opinions, and they think like exactly like everyone else. And many times they were like past founders as well. So yeah, there is nothing magical about getting in touch with them and thinking that I don't know, that they will overly analyze everything. It just, they have the same biases as everyone. It's just that, like for some reason they were probably more clever, or they position themselves better in some market at some point, and then they end up getting into the position in which they are at the moment.
I love that. Well, Esteban, this has been absolutely amazing. And as Maria said, there is so much more to dive into on this topic in general. I have a strong love of the kind of connection between right and left brain myself, and talking about branding, but in a business context, is very both sides, as you mentioned, both systemized, but also very creative. And so thank you so much for taking a little time to chat with us, all the way from Ecuador today. It was so wonderful to have you, and we definitely look forward to seeing you when you're back in town. But again, can you just shout out your company, and we'll close the session.
Sure, yeah. First of all, yeah, thank you so much for this. I love implementing systems, and I believe that they are at the heart of businesses. So I believe that this discussion is extremely important as well. Also to clarify like a couple of concepts where founders get confused with, or sometimes they cannot, like they cannot manage to find the right person as well, because it's extremely difficult. So yeah, thank you so much for the discussion, and I think like it was a great one, and hopefully an useful one for the audience. So yeah, my company is Team and Tonic. So team like like team up, and tonic. And if you want to remember it better, it's like you can make the association with the gin and tonic. It's just you replace the gin by the team. So teamandtonic.com. You can go to our website directly. And yeah, otherwise, like feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm getting consistent with posting as well, and yeah, and then you can follow us on social media. We have like a Facebook page and Instagram page where we are not as active, but happy to connect directly. And you can also send me an email at Esteban, ESTBAN, at teamandtonic.com.
Love it. And we'll have all those links down below in the description. So you can find Esteban's links and Team and Tonic links down below, and LinkedIn. But please follow, like, and subscribe. ScaleSpark as well. We are happy to talk to anyone out there about what we do and how operations and go-to-market and branding strategies work together, because they need to, otherwise they're not going to work at all. So definitely contact us with our links in the description as well, and we'll see you next time.